Hare Krishna. We welcome all of our YouTube live listeners and our listeners over Facebook Live. Welcome to all of you to this session 104 of Sri Bhagavatamrita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangraye Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Vrajavadhu Vargena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Prema Pumartho Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Madamidam Tatra Dharana Paraha Om Jnanatmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Niti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaura Katha Dhamadaya Nagara Grama Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangurlangayate girim yatkripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. We would again like to welcome all of our YouTube live listeners and our listeners over Facebook Live. Welcome to session 104 of Sri Bhagavatamrita. So this session today is going to be a very, it is going to be bittersweet because today chapter 6 and 7 of the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam will be covered. Chapter 6 is entitled Maharaj Pariksit Passes Away. So it is a bittersweet experience because of course, Maharaj Pariksit is leaving this world. Sweet because an eternal living entity is now returning back home, back to Godhead, is going back home, back to Godhead. So this is a cause for celebration. So that is why it is called a bittersweet experience. So this chapter 6, which is entitled Maharaj Pariksit Passes Away, it describes Maharaj Parikshit's attainment of the supreme destination, which is the abode of Sri Krishna's. And Maharaj Janmejaya, who is the son of Maharaj Pariksit, he performs a sacrifice for killing all the snakes because his father passed away by the killing of the Takshaka bird, the snake bird. So therefore, Maharaj Janmejaya was very angry with all the snakes of the world. So what he did and how he did, we're going to see that in this chapter. And also the origin of the Vedas and Srila Vyasadev's dividing all the Vedic literatures, how he did it, why he did it. All of that is also described in this very chapter. So this chapter starts with Suta Goswami narrating. Remember that yesterday Maharaj Pariksit, Prabhu was explaining how Maharaj Pariksit Shukadev Goswami asks Maharaj Pariksit that I have now described everything that you wanted to know, my dear Pariksit. So is there anything else that you would like me to speak to you about? So let's see what Maharaj Pariksit says. So Suta Goswami is starting off this chapter. He's saying, in the first text, he's saying, after hearing all that was narrated to him by the self-realized and equipoised Shukadeva, the son of Vyasadeva, Maharaj Pariksit humbly approached his lotus feet. Bowing his head upon the sage's lotus feet, the king, who had lived his entire life under the protection of Lord Vishnu, folded his hands in supplication and spoke as follows. So this is something very important being told here by Suta Goswami. Now, Maharaj Pariksit, he is actually very, very, very glorious. Although he is the, descendant of the Pandavas, he is, the grandson of Arjuna, the best friend of Krishna. But Pariksit has a very unique relationship with Krishna. And Suta Goswami is explaining and stressing on this point here that Maharaj Pariksit has, for his entire life, he was protected. He was under the protection of Krishna, right from the womb. From the womb itself, Krishna was protecting Maharaj Pariksit. So that is something that is stressed here. And the importance of that is that why it is stressed here? Our acharyas explain that the reason why Suta Goswami is saying that although Pariksit has been under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead throughout his life, he did not become puffed up because of that. He did not become egoistic because of that. Oh, I am invincible. That I am under the great protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore nothing can touch me. It's a fact. But Maharaj Pariksit never used it to show his puffed up nature to the world in this way. It is explained that when Rishi Shringa actually curses Pariksit Maharaj that you will die in 7 days by the biting of the snake bird Takshaka, Maharaj Pariksit had that potency in him that if he wanted, he could have counteracted that curse. He could have. The spiritual potency that Pariksit Maharaj has, he could have counteracted. He could have nullified the effects of that curse. But he did not do so. Rather, he used it as a sign of Krishna for going back home, back to Godhead, for reclaiming Maharaj Pariksit back home, back to Godhead. So this is the humility of Maharaj Pariksit that has been glorified here by Srila Suta Goswami. That in spite of having so much mercy directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Pariksit Maharaj never became puffed up. He sought the shelter of Shukadev Goswami, just like an ordinary living entity, just like an ordinary disciple, takes shelter of their spiritual master. And now we will read what Parikshit Maharaj actually says to Srila Shukadev Goswami. These are some verses that all of us should by heart from this particular chapter and try to repeat it to our spiritual masters. These are verses which are very, very, very dear to Krishna. It is explained by Srila Jiva Goswami that these few verses that Parikshit Maharaj spoke are extremely dear to Krishna. Why? Why is it dear to Krishna? Because here Parikshit Maharaj is glorifying Srila Shukadev Goswami. So it's like the disciple is glorifying the Guru. So we must learn these verses and try to worship our spiritual masters with these kind of verses, with these prayers. So with that mood, we'll try to understand these verses that were spoken by Parikshit Maharaj. So text 2 of chapter 6 says, Rajo Vacha Siddhosmi Anugritosmi Bhavata Karunatmana Shravito Yacha Me Sakshad Anadi Nidhano Hari. Maharaj Pariksit said, I have now achieved the purpose of my life because a great and merciful soul like yourself has shown such kindness to me. You have personally spoken to me this narration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Shri Hari, who is without beginning or end. So Parikshit Maharaj is glorifying Shukadev Goswami that I was, like a leaf, which is just fallen down from the tree, about to get withered away, about to get blown away by the wind of death. But my dear Shukadev Goswami, you came at the right time. And you, out of your causeless mercy, took out 7 days and 7 nights of your precious life, and you gave it for my benefit. You spoke the pastimes of Lord Hari to me for my benefit. How merciful are you? I was the one who was in a difficult situation, but you chose to help me. So I'm so grateful to you. So this is how Parikshit Maharaj is starting to, glorify Srila Shukadev Goswami and express his heartfelt gratitude to Shukadev Goswami. Text 3. Natyadbhutamaham manye mahatam achyutatmanam agyeshu tapatapteshu bhuteshu yad anugraha. I do not consider it at all amazing that great souls such as yourself, whose minds are always absorbed in the infallible personality of Godhead, show mercy to this foolish conditioned soul, tormented as we are by the problems of material life. So the spiritual master, this is like a perfect prayer to glorify the spiritual master, that the disciple submits themselves, that I'm literally rotting in this material world. I'm literally rotting, withering my time away. But my dear spiritual master, you are such an amazing, great personality, merciful personality, Karuna Sindhu, that you are just picking me up and engaging me in Harikatha. Shukadev Goswami is being glorified, continue to being glorified by Parikshit Maharaj. In text 4, he says, I have heard from you this entire Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the perfect summary of all the Puranas, and which perfectly describes the Supreme Lord, Uttama Shloka. Text 5, very important verse. He says, Parikshit Maharaj says, Bhagavam Takshako Takshakadibhyo Mrityubhyo na bibhemyaham Pravishto Brahma Nirvanam Abhayam Darshitam Tvaya. My Lord, I have now no fear of Takshaka or any other living being or even of repeated deaths, because I have absorbed myself in that purely spiritual absolute truth which you have revealed and which destroys all fear. So here Shukadev Goswami is being glorified by saying that, this beautiful katha of Srimad Bhagavatam, my dear Shukadev Goswami, that you have so mercifully imparted upon me, is literally helping me, and it has helped me. I am now completely fearless. Why am I fearless? Because now I'm able to absorb my mind in the beautiful Supreme Absolute Truth, in the beautiful Leelas of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So you have given me, you have shown me that way where I can absorb and stay in that other world. So this way, Parikshit Maharaj is glorifying Shukadev Goswami. Oh Brahmana, please give me permission to resign my speech and the functions of all my senses unto Lord Adhokshaja. Allow me to absorb my mind, purified of lusty desires, within him, and thus give up my life. So this is the response that Parikshit Maharaj gives to that question that Shukadev Goswami asked in the previous chapter, that, my dear Parikshit, is there anything else that you want to hear from me? So then Parikshit Maharaj is not completely satisfied, and he's saying, I just want your permission, my dear Shukadev Goswami, that please just give me the permission to give up my body. You see, this is the beautiful quality of a disciple, that a disciple lives for the Guru. Every breath of the disciple is meant for the Guru. It is for the Guru. The disciple can never think of even giving up the body without the permission of the Guru. That is what is being taught here by Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj is seeking permission from Srila Shukadev Goswami that please, now I'm completely satisfied. So now please allow me to leave my body. So we see that the same mood was displayed by Srila Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, when he was so sick, every day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the walking Lord Jagannath, because Haridas Thakur considered himself so fallen, he would not even, he would just come, and from far he would take darshan of the Sudarshan of Lord Jagannath's temple. And he would just take darshan of Patit Pavan Jagannath's face, which can be seen from the outside, from the Surya Stambha. He would never enter Lord Jagannath's temple. He would consider himself so fallen. But the walking Lord Jagannath, that is Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, would come every day in the morning to come and see Haridas Thakur with Mahaprasad of Lord Jagannath. And both of the personalities would, Mahaprabhu would sit with Haridas Thakur at Siddha Bakul, Haridas Thakur's bhajan kutir, and they would both immerse themselves in chanting the holy names. So one such day when Mahaprabhu came to visit Haridas was very sick, and Mahaprabhu said, what is wrong? Haridas, why are you so sad? He said, my dear Lord, I know that you are going to be winding up your pastimes very soon on this planet. I do not want to see that Leela of yours. You are winding up Leela, I don't want to see. So I beg for your permission that just like a bumblebee who fixes itself on a beautiful golden flower, may my eyes, like the bumblebees, be fixed upon your golden lotus-like face. And may I leave my body looking at your lotus face. So Haridas Thakur begged for the permission of the Supreme Lord before leaving his body, and Mahaprabhu permitted that. So we see that this kind of, this is the kind of, behavior that an ideal disciple, an ideal Vaishnava, an ideal personality does. They don't just do anything out of their whims and, their fantasies. No. Whatever they fancy, they do that. No, they don't do that. Every life, every air of their body is actually meant for the service of their spiritual master. That is an ideal disciple. So, in that very mood, Srila Parikshit Maharaj, he's teaching us how we can cultivate this kind of mood for our spiritual masters. So, therefore, Shukadev Goswami is being told here by Parikshit Maharaj that, I have completely understood, I'm completely satisfied about, hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from you. And now I am ready. I am ready without any discussion. I don't want any more discussions. I'm now ready to go back home, back to Godhead. Just permit me. Give me your permission. Give me your blessings. So, text 7, he says, Parikshit Maharaj continues to say, "You have revealed to me that which is most auspicious, my Lord, the supreme personal feature of the Lord. I am now fixed in knowledge and self-realization, and my ignorance has been eradicated." So text 8, Sutta Goswami says that thus requested, the saintly son of Srila Vyasadeva gave his permission to Maharaj Parikshit. Then, after being worshipped by the king and all the present sages, Shukadev Goswami departed from that place. Shukadev Goswami leaves from there after being very wonderfully worshipped by Maharaj Parikshit. He gave his permission to Maharaj Parikshit, and Shukadev Goswami left from that place. Text 9 and 10, Maharaj Parikshit then sat down on the bank of the Ganges upon a seat made of durba grass, with the tips of its stalks facing east, and turned himself toward the north. Having attained the perfection of yoga, he experienced full self-realization and was free of material attachment and doubt. The saintly king settled his mind within his spiritual self by pure intelligence and proceeded to meditate upon the supreme absolute truth. His life there ceased to move, and he became as stationary as a tree. Stationary, he didn't move. Even an inch, he didn't move here or there. He was so sthira, became so ideal. Text 11 says, "O learned Brahmanas, the snake bird Takshaka, who had been sent by the angry son of that Brahmana, was going toward the king to kill him when he saw Kashyapa Muni on the path. Takshaka flattered Kashyapa by presenting him with valuable offerings and thereby stopped the sage, who was expert in counteracting poison, from protecting Maharaj Parikshit." Kashyapa Muni thought that, let me try to protect Maharaj Parikshit. But then the snake bird, who could assume any form that he wished, he disguised himself as a Brahmana and approached the king and bit him as the snake bird Takshaka. So here Jiva Goswami explains that, out of the mercy, the Vaishnavas, here, Shukadev Goswami already had left the place. Everyone present, the many, many sages who were present in the assembly, they all knew that, Takshaka is coming and that Maharaj Parikshit is going to go. But out of the compassion of their heart, they couldn't see Maharaj Parikshit leave immediately. So Kashyapa was sent to dissuade Takshaka. But Takshaka, he was inspired, by the Supreme Lord. It is said by Jiva Goswami that he assumed the form of a Brahmana and he went past Kashyapa and he came towards Parikshit Maharaj, assumed his form of the snake bird Takshaka and bit him like that. So this one, Jiva Goswami explains that we should not think that Kashyapa or the sages, they failed in their attempt, but rather they were just showing their loving concern, their love to Parikshit Maharaj by trying to protect him in this way. So this is what we must try to understand from these verses. We should not try to think anything otherwise. Text 13 says that while living beings all over the universe looked on, the body of the great realized saint among kings, Maharaj Parikshit, was immediately burnt to ashes by the fire of the snake's poison. So, Parikshit Maharaj's body was burnt immediately by the snake's poison. But here, Parikshit Maharaj, he is being addressed as Rajarshi, as the self-realized saint amongst the kings. Then, it is explained, Sutta Goswami explains that there arose a terrible cry of lamentation in all directions on the earth as well as the heavens. All the demigods, the demons, the human beings, and other creatures were astonished, and they were in lamentation that Parikshit Maharaj left his body. Then immediately, text 15 says, kettle drums sounded in the regions of the demigods, and the celestial Gandharvas and the Apsaras, they sang beautiful songs. The demigods showered flowers, and they spoke words of praise. So Srila Jiva Goswami says that in the previous verse, there is lamentation. And now in this verse, they are in jubilation. Why? Because lamentation is something very, 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 very natural. When anyone leaves their body, however self-realized they may be, lamentation is something very natural. We must lament, we must cry. There is no harm. Arjuna, he is the perfect student of the Bhagavad Gita. He told Krishna that, Krishna, I understood everything. Karishya vachanam tava. I will now do whatever you tell me to do. But when Abhimanyu left his body, Arjuna came, and he was broken, he was shattered, he was crying that his wonderful son, 16-year-old boy Abhimanyu, was killed. And that too by cheating. He was killed so mercilessly. So many yoddhas, so many warriors together, they came and surrounded Abhimanyu and killed him in this way. So Arjuna was broken. He was shattered completely. He was crying. And then he became angry. He became furious that how could they use such cheating, to kill his son. So anyone who looks at Arjuna, his external behavior, they would think, oh my God, what kind of a disciple of Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna? Krishna says, Samoham sarva, they should be, Sitoshna Sukha Dukkhada. That, Sukha Dukha, you should be same. Why you're being disturbed? Why is Arjuna getting so disturbed? He should have come in, seen the dead body of Abhimanyu, and he would say, oh, Krishna, very nice, very nice. My son is now dead. Oh, this is all the arrangement of Krishna. That would be very superficial. That is very superficial. That is not natural. Natural is how Arjuna responded. So the real test, Prabhupada explains, that Arjuna is actually a perfect disciple of the Bhagavad Gita, that he never gave up his prescribed duty of fighting. He never gave up, because for Arjuna, fighting was his service to Krishna. So Krishna's service was never given up by Arjuna, even when he was faced with this kind of calamity. He rather became more vigorous in rendering his service. And he took up his bow Gandiva. He made the promise that tomorrow Jarasandha will not see, not Jarasandha, Jayadratha, sorry. Jayadratha will not see the, sunset tomorrow. Because he was the main culprit behind Abhimanyu's death. So in this way, Arjuna came back to the battlefield in a more vigorous way. So similarly here, it is not that, when as soon as Parikshit Maharaj left, that everyone started rejoicing. No, that would have been really, really, very superficial. But rather, they were all lamenting. Everyone was crying. There was lamentation going on in the 3 planetary systems. But then they composed themselves. And then they realized that, Parikshit Maharaj has gone back home, back to Godhead. And thus, They now started playing kettle drums. They were the Apsaras and the Gandharvas. They started dancing and singing, celebrating that a soul has been reclaimed by the Supreme Lord back to his own home, back to his own abode. So Srila Prabhupada also, in this regard, he says that when Prabhupada was one time leaving from one place to the other, all the disciples were crying, in separation from Srila Prabhupada. They were crying, but there was this one devotee who was, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, showing some ecstasy like that. And Prabhupada made this statement that is very superficial. That is not natural. That when the spiritual master physically leaves, that we must feel some separation. We must show that separation. That is natural. So here, even the demigods showed their lamentation. They expressed their heartfelt lamentation, when Pariksit Maharaj departed. And then they composed themselves and they, sang and danced in jubilation, celebrating the fact that Pariksit Maharaj went back home, back to Godhead. So text 16 says, hearing that his father Pariksit had been fatally bitten by the snake bird Takshaka, Maharaj Janmejaya became extremely angry and had Brahmanas perform a mighty sacrifice in which he offered all the snakes in the world into that sacrificial fire. So we see how much power is there amongst Brahmanas and how much power is there within the resolve of a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya prince, Maharaj Janmejaya, he resolved that because my father got bitten by a snake, I'm going to kill all the snakes in this world. That was the level of anger that Maharaj Janmejaya had. So he, employed the Brahmanas in such a way that they performed a sacrifice where all the snakes would come pouring in and they would just be, emulated into that sacrificial fire. So when Takshaka heard of this and when he saw that the most powerful serpents are being burnt in the blazing fire of that snake sacrifice, he was overwhelmed with fear and he approached Lord Indra for shelter. So when Janmejaya, he saw that every snake is entering into the fire, but Takshaka is nowhere to be seen. Takshaka is not there. So he told the Brahmanas, why is Takshaka, the lowest of all serpents, not coming into this fire? Why? So the Brahmanas replied, my dear king, the snake Takshaka has not fallen into the fire because he is being protected by Indra, who he has taken shelter of, and Indra is holding him back from falling into the sacrificial fire. So then the intelligent king Janmejaya, hearing these words, he replied to the priest. He said that then, my dear Brahmanas, why not make Takshaka fall into the fire along with his protector Indra? That was the resolve of this Kshatriya and the power of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas then chanted a mantra for offering Takshaka along with Indra into the sacrificial fire. And Takshaka immediately fell into this fire together with Indra and his entire host of demigods. Everyone fell into this sacrificial fire. When Lord Indra and along with his airplane and Takshaka were suddenly thrown from their position by these insulting words of the Brahmanas, Indra became very, very disturbed. So Brihaspati, who is the son of Angira Muni, seeing that Indra had fallen from the sky in his airplane along with Takshaka, then Brihaspati came to Maharaj Janmejaya and spoke to him as follows. So Brihaspati approached Janmejaya and said, my dear king, it is not fitting that this king of snakes meet death at your hands, for he has drank the nectar of the Devatas. Consequently, he is not subject to the ordinary symptoms of old age and death. So the life and death of an embodied soul and his destination in the next life are caused by himself through their own activity. Brihaspati is explaining this. So therefore, my dear King Janmejaya, no other agent is actually responsible for creating one's happiness and distress. So Srila Jiva Goswami is explaining that although Maharaj Pariksit apparently died by the bite of Takshaka, it was Krishna himself who brought the king back to Godhead, towards Krishna. So Brihaspati wanted this young king Janmejaya to see things and understand things from the spiritual perspective by making him see this truth. Don't see that, oh, just my father got killed by the snake bird Takshaka, therefore I want revenge. So this is how Brihaspati was trying to make Maharaj Janmejaya aware of the spiritual aspect, giving him a little bit of a paradigm shift. So he says, therefore, my dear king, please stop this sacrificial performance, which was initiated with the intent of doing harm to others. Always an activity is judged by the results. Phalena parichiyate. What is the result of doing what we are doing? What is the intent with which we are doing a certain activity? Is it good or is it bad? So therefore, Brihaspati is saying, your intent, my dear Janmejaya, is that you're first of all acting out of anger, you're acting out of revenge, and you are trying to do harm. You are doing this whole thing just to harm some other innocent people. The sage Brihaspati, he says, many innocent snakes have already been burnt to death. Just because you got angry with that one snake Takshaka, you killed so many innocent snakes. So indeed, Brihaspati concludes that all persons must suffer the unforeseen consequences of their past activities. So that also is told by Brihaspati, which means Jiva Goswami is saying that Brihaspati is admitting that the snakes who appear to be innocent, it was also an arrangement by Krishna himself, that Krishna inspired Maharaj Janmejaya to do this kind of a sacrifice, to punish all the snakes of the world, because snakes are not innocent. They do a lot of harm to a lot of people, innocent people. So they are definitely not innocent. So Brihaspati is saying that, snakes got punished anyways. But the intent with which you are doing the activity, taking it upon yourself to punish everyone, for something that one particular person has done, is it really fair? Like, you are giving the punishment to all the snakes for the activity that one snake has done. Is that justified? That is not justified. So therefore, Sutta Goswami continues that being advised in this manner, Maharaj Janmejaya immediately replied. He said, so be it. And he honored the words of the great sage Brihaspati. And he immediately stopped the snake sacrifice. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments that the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu is so powerful that even the illustrious son of King Pariksit was temporarily covered. It became, his judgment got covered. Although he got inspired to do this by the Lord himself, but, because his intent became malicious, so it was covered. But because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes on to explain that because he was a devotee of Krishna, his bewilderment was quickly rectified. So such devotees, Sutta Goswami continues to say that such devotees come to understand the supreme transcendental situation of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, because they are no longer polluted by the concepts of I and my, which are based on body and home. So Maharaj Janmejaya, being told by Brihaspati, was immediately able to understand that, yes, what I'm doing is not correct. So then it goes on to explain, Sutta Goswami goes on to explain that one should tolerate all insults and never fail to show proper respect to any person. Avoiding identification with the material body, one should not create enmity with anyone. Ajata Shatrava, Shanta. These are qualities of, devotees of Vaishnavas, that they don't have any kind of enmity towards anyone. So then, Sutta Goswami says in text 35, very wonderful shloka. He says, Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Krishnaya Kunta Medhase Yat Padam Buruha Dhyanat Samhitam Aghaya Adhyagam Imam. I offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who is invincible. Simply by meditating upon his lotus feet, I have been able to study and appreciate this great literature. So now, Shaunaka Rishi. So this completes, half of this chapter, the passing away of Maharaj Pariksit. So now, Shaunaka Rishi, who were the 60,000 sages at Naimisharanya, their leader was Shaunaka Rishi. So he's asking this question to Sutta Goswami. He says, O gentle Sutta, please narrate to us how Paila and the other greatly intelligent disciples of Srila Vyasadeva, who are known as the standard authorities of Vedic wisdom, spoke and edited the Vedas. So because the Vedas and all that, they were all in the Shruti and the Smriti before. They were all just remembered. Nothing was written down. So, Shaunaka Rishi is asking that what made Vyasadeva write down all the Shrutis and Smritis? So Sutta Goswami says, O Brahmana, first the subtle vibration of this transcendental sound appeared from the sky of the heart of the most elevated Lord Brahma, whose mind was perfectly fixed in spiritual realization. One can perceive this subtle vibration when one stops all external hearing. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye. So this is how Srimad Bhagavatam started, the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto. That is what Sutta Goswami is saying here. That then he says that from that transcendental subtle vibration arose the Omkara, composed of 3 sound vibrations. The Omkara has unseen potencies and manifests automatically within a pure heart. It is the representation of the absolute truth in all 3 phases, which is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the all-powerful Brahma made use of this collection of sounds to produce from his 4 faces the 4 Vedas, which appear together with the sacred Omkara and the 7 Vyahriti invocations. His intention was to propagate the process of Vedic sacrifice according to the different functions performed by the priests of each of the 4 Vedas. So Brahma, he taught these Vedas to his sons, who were great sages amongst the Brahmanas and experts in the art of Vedic recitation. They in turn took the role of acharyas and imparted the Vedas to their sons. In this way, throughout the cycles of 4 ages, generation after generation of disciples, all firmly fixed in their spiritual vows, have received these Vedas by disciplic succession. At the end of each Dwapar Yuga, the Vedas are edited into separate divisions by eminent sages. Observing that people in general are diminished in their lifespan, strength, and intelligence by the influence of time, great sages took inspiration from the personality of Godhead sitting within their hearts and systematically divided the Vedas. O Brahmana, in the present age of this Vaivashvata Manu, the leaders of the universe, led by Brahma and Shiva, requested the Supreme Lord to save the principles of religion, O most fortunate Shaunaka. Exhibiting a divine spark of a portion of his plenary portion, the Lord then appeared in the womb of Satyavati as the son of the great Parashar Muni. in this form named as Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas, he divided the one Veda into 4. So, in this verse, Sutta Goswami is talking about what is happening in this particular Vaivashvata Manu's reign. Okay. So text 50 says, Srila Vyasadeva separated the mantras of the Rig, Atharva, Yajur and Sama Vedas into 4 divisions, just as one sorts out a mixed collection of jewels into piles. Thus he composed 4 distinct Vedic literatures. The most powerful and intelligent Vyasadeva called 4 of his disciples and entrusted to each of them one of these 4 samhitas. Srila Vyasadeva taught the first samhita, which is the Rig Veda, to Paila and gave this collection the name Bhavricha. To the sage Vaishampayana, he spoke the collection of the Yajur mantras named Nigara. He taught the Samaveda mantras, designated as the Chandoga Samhita, to Jaimini Rishi. And he spoke the Atharva Veda to his dear disciple Sumantu. So this ends chapter 6. Now chapter 7 is entitled the Puranic literatures. And in this chapter, Sri Sutta Goswami describes the expansion of the branches of the Atharva Veda, enumerates the compilers of the Puranas, and explains the characteristic of a Purana, what makes a Purana. So he then lists the 18 major Puranas and finishes his account by stating that anyone who hears about these matters from someone in a proper disciplic succession will acquire spiritual potency. So this is a very small chapter, so let us just pay attention if we want spiritual perfection. So Srila Sutta Goswami says, Sumantu Rishi, the authority on the Atharva Veda, taught his Samhita to his disciple Kabandha, who in turn spoke it to Patya and Vedadarsha. Each of them studied one of the 6 anthologies of the Puranas from my father Romaharshana, who was a disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. I became the disciple of these 6 authorities and thoroughly learned all their presentations of Puranic wisdom. Romaharshana, a disciple of Vedavyas, divided the Puranas into 4 basic compilations. And the sage Kashyapa and myself means Sutta Goswami, along with Savarni and Akrita Vrana, a disciple of Rama, learned these 4 divisions. O Shaunaka, please hear with attention the characteristic of a Purana, which has been defined by the most eminent learned Brahmanas in accordance with Vedic literature. That, now a very important part is being told by Sutta Goswami, that what really are the characteristics of a proper Purana. So he says in texts 9 and 10, Sutta Goswami says, O Brahmana, authorities on the matter understand a Purana to contain 10 characteristic topics, which are the creation of this universe, the subsequent creation of worlds and beings, the maintenance of all living beings, their sustenance, the rules of various manus, the dynasties of the great kings, the activities of such kings, annihilation, motivation, and supreme shelter. So other scholars state that the great Puranas deal with these 10 topics, while lesser Puranas may deal with only 5. So in each age, the infallible Lord appears in this world among the animals, among human beings, among sages, and amongst demigods. And by his activities in these incarnations, he protects the universe and kills the enemies of Vedic culture. So the Lord keeps appearing from time to time. Then he says, in each reign of Manu, 6 types of personalities appear as manifestations of Lord Hari. The ruling Manu, the chief demigods, the sons of Manu, Indra, the great sages, and the partial incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are the 6 types of personalities that appear as, in the reign of each Manu. Then he says there are 4 types of cosmic annihilation, which is occasional, elemental, continuous, and the ultimate, all of which are affected by the inherent potency of the Supreme Lord. So the 18 major Puranas, here are the 18 major Puranas, which are described in text 23 and 24 of this chapter. It says the 18 major Puranas are Brahma, Padma, Vishnu, Shiva, Linga, Garuda, Narada, Bhagavata, Agni, Skanda, Bhavishya, Brahma Vaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and Brahmanda Puranas. So here today we are actually in reading the Bhagavat Puran. So this Bhagavat Puran is also called as a Mahapuran. Jiva Goswami explains, because directly the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in this Bhagavat Mahapuran. So then text 25 is the concluding verse of this chapter, which gives the Falastuti, the result of listening to these different topics. Sutta Goswami says in text 25 that now I have thoroughly described to you, my dear Brahmana, the expansion of the branches of the Vedas by the great sage Vyasadeva, his disciples and the disciples of his disciples. So one who listens to this narration will increase in spiritual strength. So with this, we conclude today's session. If there's any questions, comments, or reflections, we can take that now. We thank Meena Mataji, Soumya Mataji, Rajeshwari Mataji, Janeshwar Gauranga Prabhu, and Varshana Chitra Mataji, Ma Baba, Keshvi, and Katapati Prabhu, Rekha Mataji, Madhubhashini Mataji, Sudha Mataji, Swati Mataji, Sudesh Prabhu, Reena Mataji, Shama, Supriya, Manjari, Bhargavi. Thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube. And from Facebook, Tika Mataji, thank you for joining in. And from Facebook, we would like to thank Divyangi Lalita Mataji and Prem Vikas Prabhu, Uma Pattabhi Mataji, Shamala Gopika Mataji. Thank you all so much for joining in. So today, the quiz questions are, we have 8 questions. Why was Pariksit Maharaj fearless? First question. Second, why did Pariksit Maharaj take permission of Shukadev Goswami? Third, which Brahmana was expert in counteracting the poison of Takshaka? Fourth, what form did Takshaka take to approach Pariksit Maharaj? Fifth, whose shelter did Takshaka take to be saved from the sacrifice of King Janmejaya? Sixth, who dissuades Janmejaya from performing the sacrifice? Seventh, at the end of which yuga eminent sages edit the Vedas and separate into divisions? Eighth, how many characteristic topics do the main and lesser Puranas deal with? Ninth, what are the 6 types of personalities that appear as manifestations of Lord Hari in the reign of a Manu? So thank you so much for these quiz questions. If you all have any questions, please let us know. Shweta Manjari, what does Dvaipayan mean? Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas, that is the name of Vyasadev in this particular kalpa. Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas. Dvaipayan, I really don't know what is the meaning of the word Dvaipayan. We'll have to research into that. And once I research it, once I have the answer, I will definitely answer. So I don't want to speculate on the meaning just like that. So Geeta Varadarajan Mataji, thank you so much for your comments. Thank you. So if there's any other questions, let us know. But we thank you so much for joining us. And we again want to remind you that by tomorrow, all of you will be receiving a link to enroll and register for the Bhagavad Gita sessions, which we are naming it as Gita Rahasya. So you will be, receiving the the registration link. So please do register, and please take advantage of this 9 sessions of the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to have very, very beautiful sessions which will be starting from next Thursday onwards. So please do register. My mother just responded to me that what is the meaning of Dvaipayana means who takes birth in the deep. That's what Dvaipayana means. So thank you so much, Ma, for helping me to give the answer to this. So Dvaipayana means one who takes birth in the deep. That's what Dvaipayana means. Thank you. All right. So if there's any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, we will end our session here. I'm just checking again. All right. Thank you all so very much for your association and your enthusiastic participation. We will look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.